Hello, this is the Political Matrix. I am your host, Young Morpheus, and my co-host I have with me, Emmanuel, also known as the Blue Maverick, that he goes by on Twitter, and also my good friend Mr. Cy Lawson over there, to the far right of me on the screen. Um, of course, we have the big news with all that's going on, but I'm gonna let the gentleman take care of. I'm gonna let them kind of bring the stories to you guys, and I'll try to sit back and react a little bit to it. Chris, I know you wanted to talk about something, so let's get into your story.
Well, obviously the big elephant in the room is Mr. President has been infected. He's tested positive. Um, there's so many ways to go with this, right? It's funny we're on your show right now, right, Marcus?
Mm-hmm.
Because we discuss secret societies, conspiracy theories, conspiracies, because there is a difference, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so the crowd that typically hates conspiracies or conspiracy theories is now on Twitter and other social medias with the wildest conspiracies regarding Donald Trump. It's so
He's
it's hard to
dead.
laugh.
He's dying. Right. He's dead. He's dying. He's dying, and nobody wants to prove it. He walked out. There's a stunt double. He walked out. He's got an oximeter on his back. I'm like, you gotta keep kidding.
Exactly.
I mean,
I thought that was funny though. I mean,
It just reminded me of his show, and I was just like, oh my, and they're coming together. He said it on his other, Marcus said it on his other show. He was like, American politics is simply pro wrestling. The heels get the same funeral as the heroes, and I'm like, and I didn't believe him. And then all of a sudden, Rona happened. Biden's like, nobody. Biden pulls like all of his negative advertising, and I'm like, oh my god. I was like sitting here, Marcus was sitting here talking about it like a minute, literally like a couple weeks ago. Like,
yes, he was.
He just sat there and did exactly that. I was like, he just did that. So go on, yeah. I'm like,
I mean, I guess it feels a little good to be somewhat justified and not feel like you're crazy when you keep seeing all these
right.
things.
I felt like you were a little crazy, and then it like happened, and I'm like, what is?
Well, you see all the ties, and we've been taught so much to just ignore so many things, or just there's always this long explanation that we're supposed to just automatically pre-accept. I see Kelly's in the chat. She says, "Hey," but I'll let you go on, Chris.
No, I mean, I'm right there with the manual. It is wrestling, and it's not a coincidence that Trump is friends with Vince McMahon, right? He
Might have learned some things.
so that's my thing with his positive test. Is he really sick? That's what I want to know. And not just him, but is his wife sick? What I did notice when they announced, he had made the announcement, what was that, Friday morning, 1 a.m. And then Melania was said she had tested positive too. The White House then put a statement out saying that Trump had mild symptoms. Okay, cool. Trump didn't say that. The White House said that. So to me, already right there, I was just like, uh, they don't have the messaging down pat, right? It's not all the ducks are not lined up. Then Melania puts out a message on Twitter saying, "Oh, I feel good, but I have mild symptoms." Okay, what does that even mean? So I don't know. And then throughout the day, it was all these Republicans who then tested positive. Chris Christie. Oh, and again, my laughter is not, I'm not laughing good they have it. I'm just laughing at
right.
the madness of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you might say that you might not be glad they have it. I'm not going to necessarily say I'm glad they have it, but under my belief system, the Lord punishes the wicked. So, people get certain things, and so hey, however it shakes out, it shakes out.
But
Right.
what's funny, the part that we can't miss though is the one group that has been totally against this has been his supporters, right? They've been the biggest and loudest skeptics about the virus. I don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily disagree with them on that note. Um, However, him getting it, and along with all these prominent Republicans today and yesterday, it reinforces that message of the virus to them, not to the people who already believe it. So I don't want that point to get lost in all of this as well, because those are the ones who have been most pushing against it and the least likely to believe anything they hear. So now that they see Dear Leader has it, maybe they will now start buying into the program, which we will see based on how he comes out of this. I don't even know if he's going to be able to sit for 14 days. That's the other part. Go ahead, Emmanuel.
Now, okay. Now the thing I have with it is simply the odd the odd capitulation of not odd capitulation. I mean the overwhelming capitulation of the fact that Trump had it. It was not disputed. It was not questioned. No one. I mean, my portion in regards to like the VP debate. I mean, how is that? That's in. It's the third, right? That's in 4 days. That's the third, right? That's in 4 days. I've already speculated. My speculation is that shit's probably going to turn into the Kamala show. That's probably going to be like. It's probably going to be like a forward march to like unity and brotherhood, like Biden, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it just it confuses me. It confounds me a little bit, but then I was also like, it just kind of seemed like a long-winded plan for Trump to maybe, not have to be president anymore. Because when I thought about who was leading a response to the coronavirus, who came out okay? I mean, who's the Republican that came out more or less all right? I mean, he's not showing any symptoms. He was in charge of the response. Media is silent about it. I'm like, who is that? And I realized it was Pence.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why is nobody talking? I was like, nobody. Why is nobody talking about this? Why is nobody talking about the fact that months ago he was put in charge? We are on record. He was put in charge in that response. So
yes, he was.
Yeah.
It's funny that you would say Pence. Can I bring up something? It might be a little bit off, but I don't know. Maybe it might be on. I'll see if I can tie it together. But one of the channels which I follow, who goes into different, I guess, prohibited pathways. What he was showing was an episode of, I guess, a show on Fox that was called Last Man on Earth. And it's showing President Pence dying of some kind of virus. I just thought that was
kind of funny.
Right. I mean, that's really there's irony in the fact that, and tying to what Marcus is saying, is that there's irony in the fact that the presidency is trying to be tied to like specific marketing ploys and specific network, and it's trying to go to like specific network nods to make you think, okay, we can look at Last Man R, or we can compare Biden. I don't know if the two of you saw it. Did you see the thing where Biden and Harris were compared to Superman and they superimposed Superman and Wonder Woman on their head?
No, were they really?
Yeah, I just saw it like literally like 5 minutes ago before he put me on the before he sent the link. So I'm like, they're like trying to tie it to as much popular media and popular culture as it can. So when he brings up the fact that maybe, the theory about the virus or whatever being like maybe just like they yanked it from a show, little wag the dog type stuff. Hell, it might happen. I mean, shit. So,
man,
you know,
why you had to be in my cornflakes? They're gonna take something that I felt like for the most part has stayed out of politics for a long time.
Me too. I was just.
They're just gonna just take that one thing that's not completely corrupted yet and just pee all on it. And I'm like, oh. I don't
Try
want
the
you
time
nowhere
to the
near
Avengers. Tie the time to
good,
DC
bad.
Comics.
I don't want politicians near none of the superheroes. You can tie them to
Right.
Game of
They
Thrones,
tried
some
to do it.
Thrones. I don't care. The Borgias, whatever. Rome, do whatever you want with all those other shows, but leave the comics alone.
Hey,
so
it's funny, Pence, you know, immediately too, upon the news coming out that Trump was positive, the next major piece of news that to me was that Pence and his wife had been tested and came out negative. Again, very convenient. And I see today on, I don't know if you guys noticed it, but a lot of these big accounts, especially like the media accounts, the blue check marks, they're all going all back, you know, wear your mask, you got to take this thing serious. You know, they're pushing that whole narrative and messaging all over again. But simultaneously, they're sending Bernie Sanders on the road, right? He's going on the road. So if this thing is that dangerous, why are you sending a almost 80-year-old man out on the road to meet with people and he just had a heart attack, right? The absurdity of these things are crazy. And they had a big rally in Staten Island today in New York for Trump, right? A bunch of people came out in the street for Trump. And of course, all of the media like, oh my God, it's a super spreader event. It's a super spreader. And these people have been in Portland in the streets for months. They've been in DC in the street for months. Don't you think those would be hot spots for the virus? Considering that people, even though you're wearing masks, you're still outside. They're still in close contact with each other. They're fighting with the police and, you know, rumbling with each other, etc. Don't you think like those numbers should be higher, but they're not? You notice the media acts like flies to shit anytime it's a Trump event. And again, I'm not a Trump dude, but I'm just pointing out the inconsistency in the behavior, and it makes me start to question things.
Speaking of, I guess before I get into it a little bit, I just want to say hello to some of our friends in the chat. I see Kelly in there as usual. We said hi to her earlier, but I see Signs is in here now. And to anybody else who's in the chat, I want to welcome you all in.
What's going on,
guys? What I was going to say is that it's funny that you were mentioning Trump and Trump rallies and stuff like that. I was in a panel a couple of days ago, and on that panel, there was another person who was on there, and he was a former Tulsi person who switched to Trump. And so that became an interesting debate. So and then it started going into whole Tulsi and some divisions on the and all that, but we won't go into all that right now.
I could see that happening. That's not too far-fetched. Tulsi to Trump, even from Bernie to Trump, is not that far-fetched if you are a believer in the electoral politics, right? That to me, it's not that far of a stretch. To go from Biden to Trump is a huge stretch, right? To go from like Obama to Trump is a huge stretch, but from Tulsi or Sanders, not really. In some ways, I could see it. I can understand it at least. Let me say that much.
Let's see. I was wondering, could we go and read some of the comments, get caught up to see what they're saying out there?
Sure. Sign says it would be funny if Trump didn't have it. Who wants President Pence? I'm still mulling who would be worse, Pence or Pelosi. I'm right there with him. I at this point I don't know who's worse. I can't clearly say one would be worse than the other. It's like sticking to cartoons, right? You guys probably, I hope I'm not dating myself, but it's like Mumra or Skeletor, right? Who's worse? They're both bad guys. Also, too, next one. Kelly says Chris Christie was with Trump preparing for the debate. Yes, he was, because he also tested positive too. He was one of the higher profile people. Again, it's funny. Chris Christie has it, but this thing is so bad, so dangerous. You need a test that's not even that's detecting viruses to tell you that you have it. So again, mild symptoms. He's not feeling bad. I'm like, where's the people coughing all crazy, like fevers in the hospital? You know, Trump was in the hospital. He looked like he was chilling. I know there's a certain amount of theater that's going along with this, but when I was sick in December for like 2 weeks, I mean, anybody who saw me was like, whoa, you know, you look like trash. You sound like trash. These people are like, oh, I'm sick.
Vacation time.
Yeah, exactly. But this is going into Emmanuel's VP debate topic. This is going to consume the entire night, and we're going to get we'll probably get less policy discussions in that debate than we did with Biden, and there was very little there as well.
And for me, my personal theory was that at some point, I kind of felt like, officially, America was fighting the virus, but unofficially, America just pretty much gave up in regards to the coronavirus prior to Trump getting it. It just kind of seemed like everybody just kind of gave up, stopped caring. You walk into the store, you see all the coronavirus equipment and stuff like that is being slashed by like 50%. It looked like it was literally on its way out. And all of a sudden, Trump and the rest of the red team get it. I'm like, that's awfully convenient. It's awfully convenient that they stopped caring for like at least a month or two at a time. They don't provide any help. They don't give any support. People are suffering. Millions are suffering. The media refuses to talk about it, and then all of a sudden Trump's got it, and everybody's like preaching like brotherhood and unity, and I'm just like, you all talk about brotherhood and unity, and I'm like, McConnell's still going to pull the SCOTUS pick. He's still going to do it, and he's still going to do it. He delayed it a little bit, maybe by like a couple of weeks. It's supposed to be on like October the 19th. He didn't stop. Nothing changed. We're still the same. Nothing changed. No.
You know what's funny? They had a continuity of government meeting, right? And they met with Nancy Pelosi. Again, I thought that was very weird, only because Mike Pence is still around. He didn't leave. He didn't die. Again, this is not an endorsement of Pence for president. I'm just saying how the process is supposed to work, right? President gone, VP steps up, next man up. Why are they having continuity of government meetings with Nancy Pelosi? And again, this ties into that election integrity project, dark winter, all these weird things that are going on around the edges that we're not really focused on because all of the media attention is either on Trump's latest tweet or coronavirus cases.
So speaking of Trump, I just noticed in the chat we have Trump wins MAGA 2020. And I was thinking of something, and since we have a Trump supporter in the chat, I was going to ask this question. Welcome. And just kind of hear from a Trump supporter and see what they think. If Trump is incapacitated in some kind of way, where Trump is not going to be the presidential nominee, not saying that he necessarily passes away, but he just decides, I can't do this health-wise, and Pence becomes the nominee. Who would you want as the Republican vice presidential pick?
I don't know who they like outside of Trump. They've largely, like a lot of leftists too, they've kind of given up on the system as well. In my opinion, they see Trump as a savior. I don't. I see why they do like him compared to other people. But I mean, again, it's all theater because he's all connected and tied to a lot of things that they don't like either. So I would hope that Trump wins would respond in the chat because we can see. And again, we're not here to beat up on you or, you know, we just want to. We're just asking the question.
Right.
We're just asking the question.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm genuinely curious because now that that is an actual possibility, and it's just logic wise. I mean, he has it. Some people do die from this, so putting A plus B, and so just curious who would most. I mean, well, I'm not going to say you're going to speak for every Trump supporter, but just curious. What are your thoughts and what do you think within your community of Trump supporters? Like, what do they think? Because in all honesty, I don't talk to a lot of Trump supporters, and so I am often aggravated by the way we're described. By the way, most Trump supporters think that, for instance, that I believe things from a political lens, and I feel often grouped in with a bunch of people I do not agree with on gazillions of issues. So I just want to hear from a Republican's perspective without trying to frame them in a certain manner or speak for Republicans in general. I'm trying to be more open-minded in people's viewpoints.
Right. See, the thing with me is, I agree with like Marcus and Chris here. They're starting to call like the radical left, starting to call Biden the radical left, and
Thank you.
Right. I'm just like, see that bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it really does, and it feels like you actively have to wage a fight against that. I'm just like, dude. So I get it. Suspiciously, I do follow at least one I follow one major Trump supporter. She was a Bernie supporter, and she she started supporting Trump. What surprised me is that she hasn't really said anything about it. I haven't seen anything in her timeline, which was weird to me. But Marcus brought up the Trump supporter in the chat, and I'm like, just realized that she's a major one, and I'm just like, I'm literally waiting for her response because I try to follow at least one to like not be caught in that I guess that bubble of my own.
Absolutely. I try to follow a couple conservatives, Trump supporters, black Trump supporters, people, Biden supporters, not too much, but I will say this. Last week, my brother and I went to the beach. We got a good spot right at the front. And right as we were getting out the car, huge Trump supporters, flags, all that. So my brother's like, yo, let's go talk to them. Usually that would be me, but that was my brother this time, right? So I was like, all right, cool. So we actually had a decent conversation for about 40 minutes. And Democrats who drove by watching us talk to the people, sticking their middle fingers up at us, cursing us out, stupid Trump supporters. And my brother and I sitting there like laughing. We're laughing our asses off. Like, yo, they don't even know who we are or anything, but we getting shot at from the car, right? So on some level, it's easier to talk to certain Trump supporters than it is to talk to Democrats or Biden supporters, because when you talk to them, the first two things out their mouth is "but Trump." Eliminate that and then tell me what you stand for. Don't say that to me. Say something else. Offer a policy, something. And they always, it won't take them 10 seconds into whatever they say, but Trump. And it's, okay, so you really don't have anything. You just hate his style. Even though most these guys agree on like 95% of policy, you just don't like how Trump delivers it. I get it. Marcus, you on mute? I can't hear you.
Yeah,
I'm trying to see.
There you go. My screen, it froze for a minute, so I couldn't unmute myself. So sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
I've been chomping at the bit for something that's been kind of rolling around the back of my head. Now, this is not anything I've thoroughly researched out. So I definitely warn anybody that, hey, this is just here right off the fly that's been kind of rolling around in my head for probably the last couple of hours or so. And I said, you know what? I will wait till we get going on the show, and then I will lay into this theory a little bit later on. But I feel it's a little too early right now, so we'll keep talking about it we'll keep talking a little bit more, and I will I promise you all I will divulge what I'm thinking about in this conspiracy theory. Oh no, it has nothing to do with presidential picks or anything like that. It definitely has to do with Trump though.
Marcus,
Right.
I'll read some of the comments.
No, go ahead, Chris.
Okay, I was going to just read a few of the comments. Sign says, the mad cow, referring to Maddow, pray for Trump thing backfired on her, showing how bloodthirsty neoliberals really are in her ratioing. So I didn't go to see her tweet, but I can already imagine. Kelly says, today's the 1-year anniversary of Bernie's heart attack. So at least she's still with us. I don't know if they did the body snatcher then or after, but we mentioned that last week. What else?
We were talking about it. We were exactly talking about that.
Sign says Tulsi Pence 2020 or Cuomo Pence 2020. Yep, that seems about right. Or Hillary Pence ticket 2020. But they, it seems crazy, right? But again, these people agree like 99% of the time. They just provide maximum coverage and noise on the few items they do disagree on. They just amplify that to a level that makes it appear that they really don't agree or get along, but they really do. They'll serve the same people.
And what I'm seeing recently now is that if you point out something about what the Democrats are doing, like if you're pointing out like their need for unity and stuff like that, and this is a new one for me because I've always been called a Russian or I've always been called a bot by them because I question, the Democrat narrative or something like that. But now of course I know, I've been questioned about whether I was black or all of that. But the most recent thing I got, this is like during I think this was immediately after the first debate. They were talking about how Trump took a shot at Warren, right? You remember in the first debate, Trump took a shot at Warren and basically said it was Warren's fault. He called her Pocahontas basically and took a shot at her and said it was partly her fault that Bernie lost. And then, Biden's Twitter just got all real mean about it. And I was just like, Democrats bought it on themselves. They accused, I got into an argument with somebody and they called it a voter suppression tactic. I'm like, what? That's new to me. That's a new one to me. To question the vote has become a voter suppression tactic. To question who you choose to vote for has become a voter suppression tactic, not a debate, but a voter suppression tactic. So that's what I just wanted to bring.
Hey, fellas, give me one moment. I need to go grab my fan real quick. I forgot to turn it on.
Go ahead, man. But go ahead, Emmanuel. I'm listening.
Now, see, the thing is, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've seen it, but it's never really gotten particularly that bad before. So when they started screaming out unity after Trump got sick, I'm like, no, there's been this huge mad pushback. And that tweet you're talking about with Maddow, where she where she overwhelmingly, sent out nothing but support about Trump, even though she spent years just pretty much
lying,
just calling pretty much just driving the narrative that he's horrible, he's awful, he's this, he's that. He turns ill, gets sick, makes an immediate reverse and spin. I mean, it was just it was wild to me how the backlash from that really caught how much the backlash from that really caught up with her. I'm like, you literally spent like the majority of like 4 years saying, he's an awful saying he's an awful person, and then the minute he ups and gets sick, all of you kind of capitulate and overlook the fact that he's cost like millions of lives and hundreds of thousands of people are dead. They don't even talk about it. And they just overwhelmingly are like, wish him a speedy recovery. And I'm like,
that was their money. That was their money. That's their fundraising and everything, because maybe 1 or 2 Trump tweets, depending on what he says, can make their whole segment. That's an hour of programming for them in 1 or 2 tweets, and it don't even have to be the full 280 characters, right? So in 100 characters or less, maybe sometimes, Trump could fill an hour worth of time, and in that time you'll get X amount of dollars in ads. Of course they're going to be praying for his recovery. They can't afford for that man to be sick and off the scene for this long. Do you know how much money they probably made in the past 5 years alone? Since the time he descended that escalator in New York to now, that guy's made them a ton of money.
Trump's dead don't make any money. No, Trump dying don't make any money. Trump's funeral doesn't make any money. Guess why? Because they'll have to sit there and pull a mat out, and they'll have to say, they'll have to bring up all of his good points, and they'll have to bring up all of his good slides, and they'll have to bring up, he served the country, he served his country proud, or something like that. If he turned around and he kicked the bucket, oh man, you could just probably see them just like pretty much like saying whatever's on the teleprompter, but inside thinking, my golden goose is dead. What am I gonna do? How am I gonna cope? Where's the money gonna come from? Where are the donors gonna get it? So
I'm with you. It's so much theater and so much fakery that we shouldn't even be able to predict their behavior this easily without much thought or study or research. But you can predict their actions almost to a T. I knew as soon as he said they weren't going to come out on the internet and on their programs and be like, good, I hope he dies. I knew they weren't going to do that. It was going to be the opposite way. So they got all their followers to like really hate this dude to the point to where some of them would commit a felony and go and kill him themselves, right? And then they're like, if one of their followers were to do that, they'd be the first ones. Well, who told you to do that? Like, why'd you do that? You poisoned the well. You got me all worked up watching you. I thought Russia was coming to cut off my heat. And that's his man.
Sometimes they actually put it out there. I feel like Trump actually told us something in debate, which I feel like went because they spent so much time arguing and interrupting, and everybody focused on that. I think they missed something that he said in there that I don't know if he meant to say it, if it was worded wrong, but it sent chills down my spine when I heard it. And I had to back it up. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Did he just say what I think he said? Yeah, he did say that. What Trump said, which concerned me, is he said for the virus, when they have the vaccination ready, he already has the military on standby to deploy it.
I remember that too. See, the frightening thing about Trump to me is that every once in a while, and you have to pay real close attention, sometimes he just says something surprisingly coherent, and through all the bluster and all the showboating, you kind of miss it because you're so busy watching all of the fancy moves and the flashy sayings and the different actions that you don't pay attention to what he's saying. And sometimes, and it's just maybe what, a sentence, maybe two, that should give you real pause into what he's saying and give you
Agreed.
real credence in the paying attention to what's coming out of his mouth. Sometimes he may say something surprisingly coherent or factual, but he'll say it in the most horrifying way that you don't think about it until you look back at maybe like that transcript and think, okay, that's not that gives, it gives the, it creeps a chill up your spine sometimes. So I agree with Marcus in that regard. Like, they were talking about the debate and like no policy was done and stuff like that, and I was just like, just wait. There's just something in what he was doing that we need to be watching, that we're not paying attention to, because he just and that's the gift.
And to add to what each of you said, the other part about it that is noteworthy is that after Trump said the military is logistically ready to deliver 200,000 vaccines a day, you notice the guy on the other side of the debate stage was silent. So that silent tells you that if he wins, the same program is going to take place anyway. So we have to take that into account as well, because they're coming to stick us with something, and we don't even really know what this thing is. There's all the news about the vaccine is all positive, right? There's not even mistakes. It's just, vaccine trial phase 1, great. We're on to phase 2, excellent. Phase 3, we're expanding the pool. Oh, this is tremendous. And then here goes the president on stage in front of the entire country saying, oh yeah, the military's ready. They locked and loaded. So that's going to be the next battle that we're facing as a group. And this goes beyond Republican, Democrat. This just goes to, do you want to have something injected into you that you have no idea what is in it or what it can do or what the long-term effects are? I brought up Starbucks before we came online earlier because I was just reading something, right? I only bring that up to say that.
Hold on, Chris. Hold on. Kelly, because I want to read that comment that Kelly said right before you go into it, because I know what you're about to say. Kelly says you just lost the left. Well, and that's ironic, because that was one of the comments which Trump made in there, and yeah, it was kind of a funny jab at the moment. But I know this next way we're about to go down might lose some of them out there. Now I know our loyal people out there know that we come from a good place, so we're not trying to put out anything just to confuse people or anything like that. We're putting out what just looks odd to us, what we researched before, and here it is. And all of this stuff we're talking about, you can go back and research this also. It's very, very easily accessible. And so that's the point which I wanted to say first, before anybody starts, getting their boxers or panties in a bunch. So, all right, going ahead, Chris.
So I only brought up Starbucks because this ties into like the last couple of episodes that we've had on this show. One, the Schultz got Starbucks with the help of Mr. Bill Gates Sr., who married Mary Maxwell, right? Whose grandfather was the president, of Seattle's Federal Reserve Bank. So that ties right into our conversation last week. So you can see there's big money there. Furthermore, that ties into Bain Capital, Romney. From there, you can trace lines to Monsanto and Bayer. In Starbucks's coffee or their baked products and stuff, there's like GMO products in there. There's pesticides, there's growth hormones in there. Even the milk they use, that Starbucks uses. The cows are fed corn. That corn is GMO corn sprayed by pesticides. What is that stuff tied to? Cancers, and what I've been saying for weeks now, Infertility. Gates' pops was on a board member of Planned Parenthood. So and this before Roe v. Wade. So you can just go through the line and see how these people, and again, this is beyond Trump, where I'm on the virus now. You can see these people's whole goal is to stop us from procreating one way or the other. It doesn't matter if they do it by bomb, cancer, vaccination, street crime, drugs. It doesn't matter. Their whole goal is to limit the amount of us that are on this rock. And if we don't start paying attention to these things, the money, the people who really make decisions, we're going to be really stuck. Because we're looking and talking and joking about Trump, Pence, whatever. But I feel like Trump will probably be the last president we have, if we can even call him a president.
Well, you know what? I guess you know what? I'll give it about 30 seconds for those out there in the audience to reply. But if you want me to go into a little biblical prophecy about what I believe or my faith in towards the end days and how it relates to things going on, give me a yes, go ahead, a 1 in the chat. If you don't want me to go down that road, give me a 2 and just say keep.
Just go, man. Go. We already speeded.
I know. Just go, man.
Okay. So I guess my panel wants me to go on. My co-hosts, they say let's go. So I'm a rock with them. I'm gonna have faith in them also. What it goes into, and we'll just skip to. We'll go short version because there's so much. Mm-hmm. And what a lot of people don't understand, who don't really understand the Bible or really read it in context, and I'm talking about, you need to really have a 1611 version Bible, because it has the 16 verses of the Apocrypha, which are taken out of the Bible.
Of the King James Version.
The King James Version. When you read it in that context, you are able to track history, because it literally starts talking about Alexander the Great. It starts talking about Herod, people which you can actually see in history. You can actually go to their tombs. You can research through them, which is outside of the Bible. And at that point, it starts to prophesize things that are going to happen in those times which are coming up. And the time, what it's prophesizing about in those times period, that's what happened. It talked about images being painted over. It basically said the heathen will liken his image over the images of the Bible. That's something which happened during the Renaissance period. That is also tying into that same period when all this stuff was taken out. What that goes to show when you start tying in some of this stuff is it adds in a lot more doomsday prophecy, and it's more specific to a specific group of people individually who it's upset with. And if you go back into biblical stories, there's a whole brotherly rift which happens. And according to the Bible, basically everybody is caught in between this brotherly struggle. You have one which is the supposed chosen line, and you have another one which is fighting to always try to take that line away. And the one who wasn't given the line, trying to sum this up shortly, was given the fatness of the earth. So basically giving earthly riches, in that they would do well on the earth. Well, in some of the biblical prophecies, though that remnant of tribe which was up under Israel, which moved into the area and lived there for a certain time, which fought against the people who were carted away into different slaveries, whether it was the Babylonian, the Egyptian, or the Assyrian slaveries, which once you get into the Assyrian slavery, you understand about how the Assyrians had a vast empire and how they would move their slaves around through slave networks to try to make it less likely for them to escape or run away. They're also extremely brutal, and they also took to the liberty of, in their certain temples, they painted the images and likenesses of those Hebrews which they were taken in. And some of the images show decapitation, it shows impaling, all kind of horrible things. But it also shows a clear image of what those people look like during that time period. Also, once you read through that portion, it starts to describe a migration of where these people actually start going. So when a lot of people start talking about the 10 tribes and where they are, if you start reading through those things, it becomes easier and easier to figure out, especially if you understand biblical geography and what certain places are. And to jump away from that now, we'll jump up to what I really wanted to get into. If you understand the biblical geography of these places, you understand what they're talking about in the end times and which places they're talking about are doing what. At certain parts, it talks about destruction of mystery Babylon. And Babylon, through most biblical scholars across the board, kind of all agree that America is Babylon. Now, if you want a further breakdown, I can go into that in another time. But
yeah,
basically,
that's
basically, if America is Babylon, it says that all of its friends and allies, which it thinks are with them, are consorting behind their back to do a major attack. And who it references in the Bible that's going to be the major lead of that attack, believe it or not, it says Gog and Magog. If you
that's
go,
Russia, isn't it?
that is Russia, Moscow. That's who that is in biblical terms. It also talks about destruction of Asia. People who read that automatically think that's China, Japan, whatever. That's not what it is in biblical terms. Asia, in biblical terms, is Turkey. That's what it's talking about. And it talks about certain prophecies about in the end days, your leaders, you'll be ruled by fools. And if you look what we have, Erdogan, you look at Bolsonaro, you look at Trump, you look at Great Britain, we basically have a bunch of imbeciles literally leading us all around the world. It also talks about
Even the African, and the same can go for the African continent too. They got a bunch of jokers up and down the continent who are just clowns.
yeah. Another thing that it starts to talk about is it says that it'll start to send signs. And some of the signs will be famines and plagues. Right now, lately, I don't know if people have been following it, but it's this new locust that the swarms have been just growing and growing and growing and eating massive tons of vegetation. And we've been talking about losing the bees and how that's going to start to affect, you know, our whole food source. We've been talking about all these things for years and years and years. And in the Bible, in prophecy, it talks about those things happening towards the end of the days. Another thing that it talks about is it talks about fire and brimstone being brought to Mystery Babylon. Now, fire and brimstone, the way I kind of understand it, most bombs, they create the fire. Well, what's made of them? Sulfur and all kind of things like that, which you reference in biblical terms is sulfur. It also talks about melting the mountains like wax. What's the only thing that can really melt a mountain like wax? A missile. More likely a nuclear missile, ICBM.
Mm.
And if you're already talking about in the Bible thousands of years ago that America and Russia would be fighting, and it would be fighting in the land of Israel. And Israel is where most of all the fighting which is going on in the Middle East is all surrounded about that land. All that prophecy starts leaning up to that. Then it starts talking about currency, where we'll go to currency, which would be like electronic, where we'll have to receive a mark that to be able to use, buy, spend, do anything. And that mark, which most of you all know, is the mark of the beast. which they say you will receive either in the hand or you will receive in the forehead.
But that's
And
so, and to that part, that's already a reality. That's not, it's not prophecy anymore, and it's not a conspiracy theory anymore. It's just they're already doing that in Western Africa. It's a program with MasterCard, Gavi, GAVI, the Global Alliance for Vaccines. I can't remember what the I stands for, but MasterCard and Gavi. And you have to know Gavi is funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation largely, with their wellness pass. So that's not, and it's tied. It doesn't just hold the vaccination record or the immunization record, but it's also their Mastercard's artificial intelligence run payment system as well. So currency being in the hand, you won't need paper anymore. You won't even need a card anymore. Sorry to step on your point.
no, you're fine. I guess Kelly had a good question, which I'll answer. She thought Babylon was modern day Iraq. No, that's not correct. Because if you really read through the text, the way it describes Babylon is Babylon has control and influence basically all over the world. And all the sins and wickedness of the world are pushed out through Mystery Babylon. Now, the original Babylon, which they're talking about, would be talking about Iraq. But when it starts talking about Revelations and the destruction coming to Mystery Babylon, and it talks about her like metaphorically as a virgin. Well, if you think about the United States, the only war we've really ever had since the United States has been a country is with the United States, with the Civil War. They haven't had any war that's been on their soil. And the United States is the only nation that hasn't had war on their soil. And it describes that happening. It describes how, I guess I'll answer this question because I do observe the Sabbath. And it's after the time, so yes, I'm not working on the Sabbath. It says, is it still stonable offense to take more than 40 steps on the Sabbath? I will have to research that. I'm not aware about the 40 steps part. I do know that you are not supposed to be doing anything as in working. So yeah, if you got up and went back and forth to the restroom and you went and grabbed a sandwich, I don't think that you actually literally have to count out your steps. I never read that. So I could be wrong.
Marcus, I had a question before you drifted away from the Babylon topic. When they speak about the Lady of Babylon, who are they implying to? Are they talking about the Lady of Babylon in regards to the Babylon of Iraq or the Babylon of America?
No, when they're talking about, well, let's just go ahead and say it properly, the whore of Babylon. It's talking about the daughter of.
At least he knew what I was talking about.
Yeah, he did.
What it's saying is, in Babylon, in a sense, when it's talking about even Iraq, it's not even technically Iraq of today. It's the part of Iraq when it was controlled by the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was considered the Babylon of that day because they controlled everything. They pushed out all the sin, all the things that were going on, biblically. So whether it was sacrifice, whatever was going on that God felt was wrong, they were in control of it. And so if you go on to, the Renaissance period, they're the ones who started. It talks about how in that period, after the Romans basically took over, how the wickedness would multiply in the earth. Right after that, you have the transatlantic slave trade, you have the Silk Road slave trades going on. I mean, you have the Spanish Inquisition, you have what else? What is it? The Crusades that happened. I mean, so literally in that couple 100-year period, all of these things did just massively increase, and it was just because of this nation of Babylon. And what happened is, as the Roman Empire started to decline, their power kind of went into the Roman Catholic Church. And the Roman Catholic Church, they kind of seated themselves in next to all the royalty of all the nations to kind of speak into all the nations' ear. And so that's how they retained their power in a sense. And so when they moved over to America and America becomes the power center, America is resembling all the things of the old republic, of Rome, the original Babylon, because it's doing all of the same things. You have slavery, you have everything which they felt that was bad. You had gambling, not observing the Sabbath, abuse. Give you guys get my point.
Hey, Emmanuel, I have a question for you too.
Hmm.
Kamala, if the Democrats win, I personally think that she'll be in charge at some point.
Right. I go ahead. What was your question?
No, I was just gonna say, what do you think about that?
In regards to that, I just one second. Marcus, the only reason why I brought up the horror of Babylon was because I had read in a previous text about it's tied to the Scarlet Beast, and then the depiction of like it's 13 heads, and it's supposed like connection to the it's supposedly the connection to the United Nations. But in regard to Kamala, winning, maybe. I mean, it just seems like they're pushing a huge slant towards like absolute unity. Biden was already reaching out to the right already. We were already seeing it like months beforehand. The Trump getting sick and the removal of the negative ads. I mean, he just pretty much dropped the pretense of like, I really need the right's help. I mean, he's just kind of completely alienated the left at this point. I mean, he wants like literally nothing to do with them. And someone even brought up the other day, like they're all going out there and they're all campaigning. It's Bernie. Bernie's campaigning for Biden. I'm like, why isn't Kamala literally doing that right now and taking complete advantage of the fact that, Biden's like sequestered up in his, basically sequestered in his basement, where he's been holed up or whatever for like 2 weeks before he had to get like his second supposedly second coronavirus test. And I'm like, why am I not here? Why am I not being inundated and saturated by Kamala coming in and basically going around and covering for Biden while Biden's holed up in the basement somewhere waiting for his second Rona test to see if he's got it or not. So I thought prior to it, yes, I did think that. But like after, seeing after seeing the fact that it's not Kamala they're talking about going around from like state trying to make it work, it's Bernie doing it, and like literally nobody, and like he's doing it alone, literally nobody else. I mean, it seems suspect to me now. So that was my honest take on it. I mean, I haven't seen the debate. I mean, I can't give a real prediction on the debate yet. I'm just like, I feel like that's gonna.
Kelly asked, why isn't Joe campaigning? Well, before she said Kelly won't be a win for POCs, and we all know that. But she says, why isn't Obama campaigning for Joe? And the reason why I jumped in, because I got an answer for you, because Obama already knows they're going to win. That is why. He's not going to waste the effort because he already knows the result.
So your prediction is a Biden win, Marcus?
Oh yeah,
that's what you predict.
Oh yeah.
Okay. What about you, Emmanuel?
I don't think. Yeah, I think that I would say so. I mean, I'll give him that. I'll give him that. If they were really worried about whether or not Biden was going to win, at least one of the like healthy ones, like the strong speakers would have hit like the swing states by now. But they're not even bothering. I mean, I would even suspect the only reason why Bernie's going out there and doing it is because it just puts out the effort that at least they're trying. At least they're doing. At least they're showing like a minimum of effort. Right, there's like a minimum of like, well, we're still putting out there that like Biden, like Biden's gonna win or whatever. But if Biden was struggling in like the polls to the point where like people, like the rich was starting to worry, they'd poke they get Obama out.
Well, here's the thing. We all know this stuff, that the powerful pick, and they're normally split kind of down the middle, but now they're not. They clearly picked their guy or their team, and we already know that. And so, I mean, I was even watching, on the NBA Finals, and they're literally having vote, vote, vote all over everything, even on that. So the fact that they're pushing the propaganda even to that level, it's telling you it's. I've never seen them do that at any other time. To literally put it into sporting events like they're doing now. They're putting it in everything. They're even having shows where it's like kind of loosely related to election stuff. So, with all that said, the thing which people aren't focusing on is what the campaigns are actually doing, where they're actually investing money. Biden is investing money in Georgia. Trump is investing money in Texas. Now, the reason why that's significant is a Republican should never have to invest money in Texas in a presidential election. Correct. And that's a clear sign that he is in trouble and that he is worried. The fact that Biden is investing money into Georgia means he's feeling pretty confident that he might have a chance to actually maybe even win, if not draw extremely close. And so if he's that confident with all the war chest that he has of cash, that he can do that, and he can put out money everywhere, and with Trump's whole COVID response early and the audio that came out, the older generation are going to be the deciding factor in the election, and that's what they're focused on. And so they're going to fault Trump for that, and he's going to lose.
My prediction is a Trump victory, but it's going to take a while before he's announced as president. That's just my prediction. I wouldn't be surprised if the Democrats win either, but my prediction is that Trump probably should win, and we're going to see a repeat in terms of the voting. It's going to come down to the same 3 states or 4 states: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and what was the other one? Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Ohio maybe. But those 3, at least, the first 3 I mentioned, it's going to be won or lost there. I mean, if Texas flips, that's huge. I don't know if Texas is ready to flip yet, because not all of, they want to make it seem like every single Hispanic person is just pro-Democrat. There's a lot of them that don't like the Democrats. So it's not a guaranteed lock that, all of them are going to come out in support of the Democratic ticket. But we're going to see. But I swear it's going to be those 3 states again. Even here in Florida, Trump is going to win. Biden will win down here where I'm at, South Florida, because there's a bunch of Northeast Democrats who relocated here. But the rest of the state outside of Orlando and Tampa.
But he's definitely going to lose Jacksonville. He'll lose the Panhandle. He'll lose Tampa. I mean, he'll lose all the way. He'll lose from Jacksonville all the way down to, say, maybe I say like Jupiter,
Palm Beach County,
Cocoa Beach area. He's gonna at least lose all that.
Yep.
Because I know I lived there for like 12 years, and so I know Jacksonville. And then what a lot of people don't realize is in that Northeast corridor, once you creep down the middle and you hit Stark and some of those areas like that, it gets really, really redneck.
It's extremely red. I was in the middle of the state last week in Winter Haven. That's straight Trump country. Signs everywhere, all day, every store, every store, everything.
I'm going to give Marcus the Democrats investing in Georgia. There has been a serious, honest push about like getting people out there and signed up and ready to vote. I've seen a couple of Biden signs, so they're definitely trying to get this state. So me predicting a Biden win is simply like which one. I was like, which one is the economy honestly going to tank under, and which one's going to pull out the massive bailout that they're going to get. I'm like, I'm
It's gonna
just
take under either one.
Emmanuel, that's the key point. I'm glad you said that because I almost forgot to mention it. Trump, again, going back to your earlier comment about Trump, um, telling the truth or dropping and not being honest about things at times. I think if you run a business, even if you're a Democrat, if your business has been hurting all year long, and the Democrats are saying, well, when we come into office, we want to get this virus thing under control and we want to lock everything down again. If you're a business person who can't afford another 3, 4, 6, 8 months of lockdowns, you may vote for this guy because that's your livelihood, not because you like him. But imagine if you have employees, what are you going to do? You're going to vote for a lockdown and they're not offering you any relief, right? As a business owner, they're not offering relief for your employees. So that's another thing to consider. How many people can afford to not work, not draw an income? And they eliminated that extra $600. These unemployments, I don't know about Georgia or California, but here it's like, what, $275 a check? I don't know how many people can survive on that long term, much longer. So I think that's another part that a lot of people aren't considering. There may be some secret business owners who may be liberal who may pull that lever for Trump on the low because they don't want to be locked down again.
now. I was going to say, you know what, you're absolutely right, and I just recently saw like Fauci like going out there and warning people like we're prepared to lock down literally again because of like the fall and winter, and I'm just I pulled the low end of unemployment, and my low end of unemployment was like $78 a week or something like that.
Ooh.
So it wasn't very much, and even with Trump's answer of relief, I mean that was only like if you were like pulling like 100 a week or something like that. So so you're right. I mean, just like 60, like millions are out of work, millions lost their health insurance. You got millions more who aren't getting any relief for like some time now. And then now they're talking about like, and now they keep continue, and I keep realizing that we're keep inundated about like that slow uptick of like cases. We're getting that slow uptick report of like rising cases, and I'm like looking at I think I was looking at like Japan. I think I was looking at like Japan's cases, and they were good. They were like their numbers were low or whatever, and then their things started to rise, and they just started shutting like everything down. And I'm like, that could definitely be a scenario that could happen right here. And businesses really aren't that big of a fan about the lockdown in the first place. I know there's that law where they were basically saying if you die from coronavirus in our building, we're not liable. The fact that so many of them put up that sign and basically basically touted it around, it's just
I figure
something.
I need to throw a couple more. I need to finish a couple more conspiracies. Well, not conspiracies, but this is like prophecies for Bibles. And for those of you who don't believe, we'll call them conspiracies. All right, to kind of split the baby in a sense. Which actually that comes from a Bible story, but that's a whole nother matter also. But anyway, the reason why I think a whole lot of these unemployment and all that stuff is going to lead towards what a lot of people, because a lot of people talk about Trump and fascism, or just that our government feels like it's moving closer to fascism anyway. You have a bunch of people out on the streets who are protesting like we've been having going on. More people out of work, more people start protesting. It gives the government an excuse to do a harsh lockdown with the military. And if they're already talking about you know, Trump and him saying that the military is ready to give out vaccinations and all that, it's not too far fetched to believe that we could get an actual hard lockdown where everybody is not going anywhere and we're actually completely locked down as a country. And then who knows how that could, if they actually decide to fund it and get money out to people to help them and relieve them, or if they leave us to our own devices. What the Bible actually resorts to, what it says is that man will turn on man. And so it talks about basically like almost like wars in the streets amongst different people. And it says that's what's going to happen, that the people are just going to, it's not going to be an actual war, but it talks about people in the streets basically ripping each other apart in chaos.
Look, even to staying on that point, talking to my friend last night, we talking to a police officer. He said in the month of September alone, in the city down in Broward County, 67 Baker Acts he's done this in September. He said a high month for him before in under normal times was like 10. So there was 67, and that's just one, and that's just from one officer who said he's gotten 67 calls in a month. So the level of despair, chaos, the things that people are going to be willing to do if this continues on, it's not far-fetched at all.
Well, my thing is, I honestly, and this is where the conspiracy part is going to get a little crazy for some of y'all, but just hear me out. Let's see. Let me answer Science question real quick. And Kelly, well, I answer both your questions at the same time because she said all of this is mute with rigged voting machines, and that's my point. If they've already picked who it's going to be, that's who it's going to be. So, and I honestly look at the way they're putting the money. They're putting the money towards Trump. I mean, towards Biden. So if they're putting the money towards Biden, and it's not even like it's normally you'll see they're kind of divided. They're like, we can go either way. But right now, I feel like because Trump is being so much of a wild card, where sometimes he's playing ball, sometimes they don't know what he's going to do. I think they want to dispense with that and just have somebody who's easier to control. Or who, if it's Biden and he's able to keep his wits somewhat, they already know he's already on the team. And Kamala is eager to excel. So she's going to do whatever she can to keep trying to move up the ladder also because she wants to be president. So for me, it's pretty clear cut what's going to happen. And it looks like if it does get ugly and dicey as far as the voting machines and trying to go to court to figure this out, in that time period, they're not going to be doing anything to help the people who are losing jobs or getting behind on anything. And it's going to make the situation on the ground worse out there, which will lead to some more of these things we've been talking about already. So I mean, I think if anything, it kind of lends more towards kind of what I was saying, that Biden and Kamala more than likely are going to win because the powers that be are throwing all the money that way. Another thing with the gerrymandering aspect, another reason why Biden's not going to win Florida, because Florida the Republicans have gerrymandered that state so crazy that I don't see how it's possible for a Democrat to win on a national level. Then you have Georgia, which is gerrymandered all kinds of ways also, and you have a Republican governor who has showed that he is definitely willing to cheat. But once you get outside of those two areas, you start getting the more favorable territory in Texas, where it's not necessarily that they'll win, but it can force Trump to have to spend more and more resources there where he can't spend it other areas where he needs to, i.e. like a Wisconsin, Ohio, some of those areas. And Joe does have that. He's not Hillary. You have a lot of older people who he's really not. For him, they know him. So we might know him in a different way than they do, but they feel comfortable with him. So they're not going to have as much difficulty switching over from Trump to Biden as they would have gone to a Hillary.
And just in terms of strategy, though, even though he's not Hillary, the other thing, if I was Team Trump, I would be hitting Biden and the Democrats with NAFTA all over again. I'd be like, yeah, he's not Hillary, but he supported this that lost your job, that cost your job, that sent your job either out of the country or you're doing it for less than half of what you would have gotten paid, in the last generation. So I would, that's going to be fresh on people's minds too. I know they're going to be reminded of that. And I just think the virus is just hanging over our heads. It's going to, like, even today, all the announcements and everything is like, go vote. Oh, look, all the Republicans got sick. Vote. How does this correlate? Are we gonna vote it away?
What did they start doing though? They started sending me like ads for like in-person voting or like opportunities for like in-person voting. I'm like, you do, like, with the virus hanging up in the air. I mean, you see the virus feels to me like more of a performative display. It just seems like just a way to corral and
it's something that I
cold
real, but they're taking advantage of it.
They played it up. They've escalated it.
It served a few purposes too, right? And even going back to the primary season, it stopped all the Bernie people from being outside and actually being competitive in the election. So that the virus effectively ended Sanders' campaign because they said South Carolina, oh, older black people have spoken. It's a wrap. And then shortly thereafter, it was no more rallies, no more outside, nothing. They completely killed everything, and then Biden was just nominated. Under normal circumstances, minus a virus that may have caused a bit of, it may have caused a larger problem, but because everyone was scared, nobody wanted to go outside. And, of course, the media pivots to everything Trump. So nobody even put that together as well. So this virus is serving its purpose when and where they need it to.
Oh yeah, I figure since I figure we'll go probably about another 15 more minutes and round it up to an hour and a half.
Okay.
I figure I'll give out one more of the prophecies which it throws out there regarding Babylon. When we're talking about Mystery Babylon or the Whore of Babylon as it's called. It says that though it says she set her nest high above amongst the clouds, and her symbol is the eagle. And if you go back to the empires, all the empires which use the eagle, United States, and if you go, United States, Greece, Rome, Germany, Great Britain, most of those major European nations all use the eagle as their symbol. And it basically talks about all of those places represented as a part of Mystery Babylon, because if you go back to Babylon, the original part, a lot of people just think of the Roman Empire as just the Mediterranean. But if you think about it, they ruled all the way up to Britannia, what they call it, Britannia.
The present day England.
And then all the way over.
From like northern Africa all the way west.
Yeah, they were all the way over to Russia, all the way over to like the Siberia area. They ruled all of it. And so those nations all came from having that eagle. And so that's where the eagle gets transferred over to America. And how I interpret the set its nest upon the stars in two ways. For one, America is a nation which put itself on a perch above all the other nations and kind of looks about and tries to push and rule everything. And then the other one is, if you look at the space program, who tried to put themselves amongst the stars? It literally talks about trying to put their nest amongst the stars. So that's something that I think that it hints towards, this is the United States that it's talking about here.
That's true. Let me see what else we have in the comments. I'm going back up. Okay, Sign says Dems do not want to win. They're profiteering so heavily under Trump, and on screen they try, but we know they love having Trump and Republicans to blame. Besides blaming us for not voting for crappy Dems, that's a very, very valid point too.
But Republicans don't really want to win either, because whenever they're in power, I mean, whenever the Democrats are in power, they raise money also by saying no to everything. When they're in power, they actually struggle more because they don't know how to get anything done. And so then there's a little bit more heat on them, and a lot of them start getting thrown out of office when they're in power because they're exposed for not getting the things done that they promised they're going to get done as soon as they get elected. Because the Republicans typically will hold some of, especially the newer congressmen and women, more accountable, and so they'll boot them right back out of power. Whereas the Democrats won't. They just look at, okay, it's a numbers game. Well, we got one in, so we just have to keep them and just try to increase our numbers versus the quality of what you're getting in those numbers.
I mean, you see the inverse of like both situations. Like when the Democrats were in power, Republicans made a lot of money. I mean, Trump was in power. Democrats have made literally money hand over fist. I mean, even replacing RBG, they got like millions of dollars. So
yeah, they did.
They did. They got a lot of money.
But the Democrats make money even when they're in power too.
Yeah, but this Trump has been like the gift that keeps on giving for them. I mean, Les Moonves said it: bad for the country, great for our bottom line. The media companies have probably never had more eyes on them. You know, probably not since, I don't know, in a long time. You know, we've never had someone like Trump who is just so sloppy in the office. You know, Obama was super smooth. George Bush was the lovable idiot, or how they tried to paint him on one side, right? So, but Trump is he's neither a lovable idiot nor smooth. But he pisses them off, and the media then knows how to use that to, make for entertaining television, like Rachel Maddow saying that the Russians are coming to cut your power off in the winter. I'll never forget that.
But at this
point, me
either.
I won't forget that.
I was gonna say, at this point, do you not think that they made their money off of him and they're just tired of dealing with him? Because a lot of them, they go into their little rants and they're furious and all that and going off. And it's kind of funny that you guys made that mention, because there's actually a prophecy alluding to that also. It says that Gog and Magog will leave Mystery Babylon silent and dark. So that's one thing it does say in there. And knowing that they do have the ability to do that, and they also have a massive EMP weapon that they've been working on for many years, things start adding up.
But remember, there's a TV show about that, Marcus. There's a TV show about where like the from like, I think it was like the early 90s or late 90s, early 2000s, where we see like a world of like the pulse, they call it like that big singular event, like the pulse hit, and the world was different. The world was different and stuff like that. So I don't know, that it did remind me of that show. I mean, that was
last thing, guys. I just wanted you guys' opinion on this. Antifa, Proud Boys, like, what do you think that's controlled opposition or no? Because I have a feeling it's very much controlled opposition. Both groups, to a certain extent.
I mean, you go ahead first.
Let's see. Proud Boys, probably. Antifa, I think it aspires to be, but it's just too. There is just too much room. I think there's just too much room for like honest chaos amongst that group for me to really think that there's like a solid I think there's like a solid, really like a solid chain of command, or even like a real hierarchy system over Antifa, because Antifa is. I think some people want to declare Antifa an organization, but really it's more like a philosophy. Literally, like anybody could pick it up, anybody could drop it, right? Whereas like the Proud Boys is just like, it just strikes me as like general. You get the feeling of white nationalism, and like, that pretty much like, that pretty much drives their core base. So they have a solid chain of command and a hierarchical structure. So I'd say the Proud Boys over Antifa personally. So I think they tried Antifa, but definitely the Proud Boys over Antifa for me. That's me personally.
Do you see Antifa in Georgia though? Like, do you see anybody waving those flags, or I'm just curious.
You'd have to ask you'd have to ask Brandon over me, because he definitely has more boots on the ground than he definitely has more ground time in regards to like marching and protesting and seeing like a big, strong, like solid presence in that regard. I think the biggest presence I've seen was like that group of like militant blacks that was like marching through Stone Mountain. That's like the only one I really remember. So I personally haven't seen anything else like that. So personally, I couldn't tell you. I'll be honest about that. I know. I'll admit I don't know. I'll admit that. I'm big enough person to admit.
I guess as far as Antifa, just I agree with Emmanuel 100%. It's more of an ideology thing. But you do actually see people who are actually, I feel, some of them might be genuine in heart. Some of it, I think that is AstroTurf, which you see in some of the Northwest or on the West Coast, or what you see in certain parts of New York. I do know definitely out here, you do have people who call themselves Antifa. Most of them kind of, I'd say, out of the people who are hardcore actual Antifa people, the numbers are minuscule at best. But there are a bunch of people who agree with the fundamental ideology, and it's not about actually taking it to a militant point of view, like some of those people that like 0.1% out of the people who agree with Antifa philosophy. But as far as the Proud Boys, how I look at them is they are definitely an AstroTurf white nationalist organization. It's mostly wealthier white guys who started out back around the Bush era, who were paid to go and harass the people at the polls. If you go back to the 2000 election with Bush and Gore, during the recount, that's where the Proud Boys first came on the scene, and they all just popped up out of nowhere. And anytime there was any kind of pressure that the right wanted to push, the Proud Boys will always just pop up out of nowhere. Now the Proud Boys have just gotten a little bit more militant in their approach, and now some of them carrying guns and stuff, which they didn't before. So all it's done is just continuously escalate with each different iteration of the Proud Boys, and grew in numbers.
I'll give that the minuscule Antifa numbers one thing. There is something I've noticed where there are some people, deliberately posing as Antifa. I know at least one of them where they're like, it's just simply a performative display for them. Like while they're going out, like marching, they're doing, they're shooting like selfies in the bathroom or whatever. So
my thing is like, if you're going to challenge power, right? in either Proud Boys or Antifa's case. If you're really going to go against power, shooting at your neighbor or the local police, that's not really challenging power. It's you just to me it just seems like a bunch of cosplay, like a Marvel convention or like Comic Con or something like that, where these guys are like dressing up, going outside, playing around with each other because they all have a lot of guns, but nobody ever gets shot. And we, the neighborhoods we come from, our friends come from. Anytime guns get brandished, people usually get shot, right? So it's all these guys carrying guns, nobody gets shot. They're Antifa, so you would think they would be like anti-police and the things they do. You would think they would even try to maybe take on the police. Not that I'm advocating that because that's stupid, right? I'll just be the first to say, unless you're really down for that action. But you don't see them ever challenging power on that type of scale. So that's what makes me think like some of the Proud Boys, they're probably just off-duty police. Because every time you see, a lot of times you've seen the videos, they go and antagonize people and then they run behind police lines. So it's like, and the police are watching, seeing this stuff, and they're opening the line saying, all right, come on back, come on back. So that part does make me look at them a little funny. Same with the Antifa, but I think it just generally, the coverage that each group is getting now online and in the traditional media, it goes with this whole chaos theory that's going on. Like there's going to be a brewing civil war, blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to tell you this. If there's a civil war and people start acting stupid, I already told my mom earlier this morning, Ma, you ain't got to worry about me. My ass going to be in the house. That's not my battle.
I would say, Emmanuel, you got it, because that's a great point, and I kind of want to close out kind of on that point that you were saying there. Emmanuel, did you have anything you want to say before I kind of
Nah, man,
do a
I'm
little
good.
mini monologue?
No, I'm good. Go ahead, man. I got nothing.
Well, what we all know, as far as even what people who are not religious say, with the whole climate thing, we only have a certain amount of set years before everything starts going haywire and crazy anyway. So whether you believe it's Bible that it goes crazy or scientifically because of climate change or whatever, things go crazy, we all know that things are about to go a little haywire. And so I would just advocate either you start stocking yourself up, start getting self prepared in case of those situations. I would even say, get some money outside the bank just in case things shut down all of a sudden and you need to be able to get water or food or toiletries, because things get a little crazy and we can have a run on all the grocery stores and all that stuff again, like we had not that long ago when they shut everything down. And if you know that there's a good possibility that shutdown might come, especially once the weather starts to get colder, all of these things gelling together with the whole election that could go crazy and the rigging and all this stuff like that, and not having an actual, victor declared and the people out in the streets, and you got the virus going on. So there's a whole cataclysm of things which are brewing that are about to happen, and we need to be realistic about it. And I feel like sometimes people are focusing on, Kamala down the road, she's going to do this and she's going to do that. And I'm honestly thinking the situation is going to dictate what they're going to be able to do or not be able to do. Because I think because of the inaction which Congress has done up to this point, it kind of has things on it's kind of like a rock rolling down a hill already, and it's picking up steam. And they're not doing anything to stop it at this point. And it's going to get to that point. So I say, hey, we all need to start being on our P's and Q's and paying attention. And so if you're not a Bible person or whatever, or you don't have whatever faith that you might have, I'd say you start strapping up. Or if you're a faith person, dig into that. But be prepared for things to get ugly, because we all see it coming. It's just a matter if you want to admit it to yourself or not.
And what degree it will be too, right? Is it going to be level 1 crazy, level 10 crazy?
No, I'm going to give my props. on what I believe from what I've researched, and people don't have to accept this or believe it. But the situation, the way it explains it, is things will ratchet up worse and worse and worse for a period of time. And then when everything seems all crazy, people are going to be like, okay, well, things are calmed down. We can relax. And it's going to come to a point where everybody is going to be under this perfect harmony and world peace and all that stuff. And then shit's really going to hit the fan. And everything is going to get worse and worse and worse. And it is going to turn almost like how people envisioned Nazi Germany. The whole world is going to become like that to an extent. So yeah, it gets dark and ugly. It talks about 2/3 of the world's population being gone. Um, I won't go into the other stuff past that point, but it basically the prophecies about the wars and how the countries are going to start reacting and cracking down on the people and all that stuff like that. It's all been slowly ticking up, and we've noticed over the past 40 years how the country's been ticking further and further towards some kind of authoritarian nature. And biblically it predicts that. So I mean, people don't have to accept that logic, but I definitely fear that that's very, very, very possible.
All right. You want me to read some of the comments before we get out of here?
Sure, definitely.
Okay. Let me see. Kelly says, funniest tweet of the week. Do we call Proud Boys marching a pride parade? Uh, Kelly says, all we know is we don't know, which is very true. We're just, we're guessing like everyone else. Lola J, who entered the chat, she remixed a bunch of popular songs and put Trump's name in it. So that's kind of cool if you read it. Let's see what else. Anything? Other than that, yeah. Other than Lola's songs in there, I don't see too much else. Oh, okay, Sign says challenging power is challenging your Secretary of State, the machines, closed polls in minority neighborhoods, and illegally purging of voters. That's correct. Greg Palast is real big on that, especially in Georgia too, by you. So that's about it. That's, that was all the comments, Marcus.
Well, I mean, I guess, well, Kelly, I'll break down why I think that I might know a little bit more than not much. Because that's not only it. I could go on and on and on with prophecy. And so when other people argue about the book, they'll argue about like, Jesus's birthday or something. And it's like, that's just pagan stuff that was thrown and mixed in through the organized churches. It's not what the book is talking about. And so, especially when it's read in context with all that, and if people who have only read Old Testament, New Testament, oh my goodness, it's like you literally have missed a third of a movie that's going on. And most so-called Christians, that's all they've been exposed to. They miss that big chunk in the middle. So nothing really makes sense to them, or they'll hang on to one portion that sounds good to them, and then they just go with it from there. But if you don't read those middle sections, you don't get the full, because it's not only talking about this whole faith relationship or miracles or things like that. It's literally tracking bloodlines, histories, nations, the formations, the leaders of those people, how their family, how their families were aligned, and it starts breaking down things where you can see ties into modern day and then be able to lead off from there. And then, I mean, when it's literally having people like it literally predicts people that you can verify that are alive thousands of years before they were born in the book. I mean, it predicts Alexander the Great in the book. It predicts Herod. It predicts, the fall of Rome. It predicts all of those things. But those are in those books most people haven't read before. And this isn't like the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is literally part of what King James translated, which the Protestants and the Roman Catholic Church decided to take out once it was completely translated and they actually understood what the hell it actually meant. And they're like, oh crap, this is talking about us. Let's take this crap right on out of here. And then let's preach the message that we want to preach. And most people haven't read that full message. So I advocate, if you read through those areas and then you're like, Marcus, you don't know what you're talking about, then okay, fine. But you got to read those sections first before you can just cast it away.
All right. So Marcus, that's on you. I don't have anything right now.
I don't have anything more, man. You're good.
All righty. Yeah, we probably went long enough. Wait a minute. There was one last comment. Be safe, all. Improper translation of the Bible at the time led to Leonardo. Well, that's not true. Leonardo and the others to add horns to the head. Leonardo and those others, they intentionally were part of the Renaissance period, which was coming out of the Dark Ages. They literally changed images. And if you go into Russian iconoclasm and you look into early artwork, you can actually see where the faces have been painted white, and you can see where the hands are still black, or arms are black on the bodies and things like that. Or you go into certain castles, like for instance, Vlad the Impaler's castle. And it literally, all the angels and Constantine and all of these people on the wall are black people at the time when Vlad the Impaler is said to be a white man, and Constantine and a lot of these people. And that's literally still on the walls there of the castle today. But the Renaissance period changed all these things up. And that's when they also start taking the chunks out of the Bible. That's also the transatlantic slave trade and all those things like that. So it also details the northern tribes after their Syrian captivity, them taking a path following down the Euphrates, down the Nile, and then crossing over into a new land that took them a year and a half to get to, which nobody lived in before. At that time, there was only one continent which nobody was living on, and that was America. So, I mean, to me, it's telling pretty clear stories in a succinct pattern, which you can follow once you read those other details. So that's all I had to say on that. I'm gonna still keep working on you, Kelly. I got more since I haven't convinced her yet. But this has been the Political Matrix. This has been I'm your host, Young Morpheus, here with my two great co-hosts, Emmanuel and Chris. Hopefully you all have a great week, and keep studying out there, keep researching. Also, if you haven't paid attention on my What I've Been Thinking channel, if you go into my playlist, you can find some of the videos which I do some of my research on in there. I have a category for dark secrets, which I advise you all to check through there. It has some stuff about secret societies, things like that. And if you're curious about some different things on religion, and I mean, from atheist point of view to certain religious points of view, I have a lot of that thrown in there, and some historical stuff also. So make sure you all check out that playlist. Almost everything I research, I put it in those files, so you all are able to follow along with some of the stuff which I find. Granted, everything I research is not in there, but that will help you all see some of the things I'm looking at. Goodness, sorry, blabbing too much coffee, sorry. This has been the Political Matrix. Hopefully everybody has a great weekend. See y'all next week.